And today we're going to be talking about some interview tips that should be able to help you nail that interview the next time, right? So I'm just going to dive in. The first one is tell a good story. I feel like that's so important. And some of the most memorable interviews for me have been candidate stories that I share them sometimes with the team or with other managers, with other business owners. I think it's really important to be able to tell a good story about when you solved a problem, how you deal with conflict, helping out a customer, a client, conflict resolution, a mistake that helped you learn and grow in your role. Um, Anyone can kind of tell you, hey, I did this or this happened. But if you tell a good story, it makes you a really memorable candidate.
Okay, so let me ask you this. And this is kind of what I would think to do. And I want to just kind of get your opinion on that. So for me, like prepping for the interview, I know that those are some of the questions that they're going to ask me. Like, tell me a time you solved a problem. Tell me a time you had a deadline and you met that deadline. Like everybody uses pretty standard questions. And so for me, I try to think ahead of time. If they come to me and say, give me a time that you had to solve a conflict, I'm going to think about what I see in the job description. I'm going to think about what is in my resume, and I'm going to preemptively come up with some of these stories. Some of these stories you don't need, like, you don't want to memorize them, right? You don't want to be rote, like anything like that, but you need to have in your back pocket some of the conflict that you've had, how you resolved them, what those look like. That way, when you're in there, you don't panic. And even if you panic, one of the best things to do when you panic is to be like, you know what, that's a great question. Give me just a second. Let me think of something, right? But like, have some of those already preset. So then you're like, oh, that's a great question. Okay, here's one. So there's not as much of a pause, right? And it makes you look like you're a little more prepared for it. Plus, you feel more confident. When you know the answers ahead of time, like you're going to feel more confident. That does not mean write them down and memorize them because you're going to repeat them on repeat over and over. Like that is so unauthentic. Like that's very noticeable in an interview. Like when I'm in an interview, I'm looking for somebody who, even if you're nervous, I'm cool if you're nervous, but even if you're nervous, I'm looking for somebody who's trying to connect, who's not just like viewing the facts of the resume. I can read your resume. I can see what you did. Like I know that. I can ask you the questions and I'm asking all the same people the same questions. So you're probably going to answer in the same exact way as everybody else. So don't,
Yeah,
right? Don't
right.
have a couple of those in your back pocket. To know some conflicts that were really, really great. Like they're going to ask you about conflict resolution. Know how you solve things. Know that about yourself, right? Like that's a very important, like, skill that you should know how you handle those things, whether you're interviewing now or in 10 years. Like you need to know those things, right? How did you make a difference, right? If you have listened to any of the other tips that we've given you, you already know how you're making a difference, right? And so what you do is you take that difference fact that you put on your resume and you tell the story behind that, what that looked like, how you resolve that. One of my favorite questions, or one of the things that I look for the most when I'm interviewing people, it's because that's the kind of people I need on my team, is individuals who can not only problem solve, but like have the ability to kind of think outside the box, or like have the resolution without having all the details to resolve it. Like I don't want to have to hold your hand, and I don't want to give you a very strict SOP to follow. I need to give you guidelines and then I need you to execute them. So I need people who can like think on their feet, who can problem solve. And so when I'm asking questions, I'm looking to see like how much support did you get in solving that problem and what did you do? Like what actions did you do to make sure you can solve that problem? Point in case, a lot of times where I've hired, like interviewed people that are like salespeople, right? And so one of the questions is like, how did you get your leads? What did you do differently? And a lot of people are like, oh, they're in my database or they're this or this. I like this. People are like, one time I went and sat at a coffee shop and I texted a bunch of nurses and asked them if they wanted to meet up with me and we could have coffee. Or like, created bookmarks for my work for whatever, like instead of business cards. And I went around and I stuck them in books to see who would call me. Like I'm looking for somebody who's like, nobody told me what to do. I just like tried something and it worked out or it didn't. Those that didn't, why? Like know why something didn't work out. One of the best ways to do is like show growth in your stories. Like how did failing at something actually teach you something? That one's very precarious though. Like you have to really know how to like word that one. I'm not gonna lie. One of the worst interview questions or one of the worst interview answers I ever gave. And I'll tell you, I did not get the job. They were like, what is that one question like? What is a fault of yours? Or like what did you say is
Your
like
greatest weakness.
your greatest weakness? Okay. Do not say that you are in organized chaos. Like business owners don't appreciate that. Hiring teams don't appreciate that, right?
Which
Like I
is
learned
true
from
though,
that.
because I mean, I feel like I thrive in chaos, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yes. But I can deliver under pressure.
yeah,
Sounds a lot better than I thrive in chaos.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So like there's some nuances. If you're gonna pull out some of the high technical ones, make sure you truly understand how to like present that value. But definitely have some in your back pocket. Talk to other people, like be like, this is what I would say. Do you like that? Like you could reach out to us. We'd be really happy to meet with you for 15 minutes and kind of talk about what it is you plan on saying, and we can help you tweak that based on like what your resume is and things like that. Like if you want to book something with us, that's absolutely fine. But that's kind of what we're looking for is like how can you articulate what value you're going to bring without sounding boring? Because nobody wants to hire somebody who just sounds so remote and boring. You're just like, oh, you might not be a really good fit for the team, even though you have the skills, right? Like, so definitely, I love people with stories. I love authentic people. I don't remember if that's one of your statements, but like, I guess we'll kind of go into it. But like, oh, be authentic. Like,
Yeah.
be yourself as much as you can. There is a fine line between being professional and being authentic. We all want to present our most professional self, but that's not always our most authentic. And so then you get hired, and people are like, "Oh, you do not jive with the team like we thought you would." And that can get some people let go depending on the team, especially when you're going to like a smaller team. The complexities of teams and small teams, like if people don't fit, like that's a problem, right? Like if you do not fit into a small team, you can really be disrupted in that organization. So I believe fully in like presenting yourself right with your skills and stuff, but being very authentic to who you are as well. What do you think?
I think the authentic part is so true because I mean, I've interviewed people that are great interviewees, and they're so you either are kind of you suck at interviewing and you're just like you're that nervous person that freezes up and you're like, I have never done anything in my life. And it's like, or you have the great person that comes off as so charismatic and they check off all the boxes. But I feel like at the same time, as an interviewer, it's so important to be able to ask those questions that it's like, okay, is this person just really, really great at interviewing and has a really great personality? Because we all need somebody on the team that gets along with the team, but you don't want to be the personality hire either.
Yeah.
It's like once you get in, especially now where, so many people use things like ChatGPT and stuff like that to bolster kind of up their resumes. It's so important to really dig deep and be like, is this really what you did? Were these kind of your tasks? And so you kind of went into my second tip, which was don't just answer what you did, explain why it mattered, right? People want to hire impact. Are you the person who's going to bring impact and bring progress to the organization? Um, and so if you come in and you're just answering with what you think people want to hear, I feel like it almost comes off as deceptive. Once you
Hmm.
come into the organization, you're like, yeah, you definitely didn't do all the things that you said you were doing, or um, you don't see that drive. For me, a lot of times it's what kind of drive does this person have? And drive doesn't necessarily mean they're going to work 60, 100 hours a week or, whatever it may be. It's what initiative are you showing? What questions are you asking once you're on? I also don't want someone that's like, yeah, I get it. I understand everything. You trained perfectly and I can do this job. And then you kind of let them go on their own and you're like, wow, I'm the worst trainer ever because they're definitely not getting it. You're right. So I think it's that thing where if you come in authentically and you truly describe what impact you had in your last role, maybe in the last couple of roles that have led you to now want to be part of this new organization. And I think it's important too to also be reflective before you go into those interviews and understand what is your skill set, right? Um, so
And why
I
it
think it's
matters. What is
really
your skill
important.
set and why it matters?
What is your skill set, why it matters, and maybe like what pain points does that employer have that you can bring something to the table for them. Um, I think it's so
Which,
important. I think it is truly, I'm not looking for the perfect interview. I'm not looking for someone who gives me all the right answers. I'm looking for that person that when things turn into a dumpster fire, they have my back and they can help the company reset, you know?
yeah, and I love, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it is definitely important. I was gonna say like a point just a minute ago. Oh, you said pain points. Okay, that made me think of it. So, and I know that this is later on, but it's like one of those questions, like when people are like, "Do you have a question?" You're like, "I don't know what your questions are." What pain points does your company have right now that you want this role to solve? That is a great one. Asking that early on and be like, can I just ask a question before we like get started? Or like even in the middle of it, be like, I have actually a question real quick. That question allows you to understand where they're at so that you can apply what your skills can actually do for them. Because when you go into an interview, you're assuming you know what they want and they're assuming you know what they want. And if nobody asks the questions, then nobody really knows what they're solving, right? So I mean, I know that that's future, but that made me think of it. Like that's a really good question. If you're looking for something to ask, what pain points are you trying to solve in this role within your organization? Okay, all right, continue on. Sorry.
No, I think a lot of times when, let's be honest, when you're looking for a role, unless you're looking for a role because you have job, you may have job security and you're just looking for growth. Maybe you've outgrown your current role and you're kind of exploring other opportunities. That's a very different interview than if you're like, I cannot pay my bills. And if I do not get this job, I don't know how I'm going to put food on the table, right? So I think a lot of times, depending on where you are and what point you are in your life, that interview might hold very different, outcomes for you, right? It could be hey, it wasn't a great fit, but I have a steady paycheck and I was just looking for another opportunity, or like I don't know what I'm going to do. And a lot of times those situations, I feel like we become very please pick me type of situation versus am I a good fit for this organization, right? And so I think sometimes when we make decisions or we throw those applications as kind of like a Hail Mary type of thing, we put ourselves in a situation where maybe we get the job and then once we're in the job we're like, wow, this is not the right fit for me, like I have a paycheck but I have something that I dislike. And I think ultimately we start to begrudge kind of the job because we're not happy in it, right? So I think it's really important to, one, and we've talked about this, is understand what you are applying to and what organizations you're submitting your resume to. And when you're in the interview, it should not just be you being interviewed. You should also have the opportunity to interview the employer, right? So instead of pick me, it should be are we a good fit for each other? And, it's important to have those questions like, what does success look like for you? What do your top performers do differently within the organization? What challenges, am I walking into? And like that kind of leads into the pain points, right? Or like, what pain points are you looking for me to help you solve? Those I feel like instantly change the conversation.
Yeah, it changes the conversation from like transactional to like a partnership, like subconsciously, right?
Yep.
When we open up and we're like, what questions do you have? And it's like, well, we went over the benefits and we went over the pay. So I guess like, when are you looking to hire me? Like, or to start, like, I feel like you didn't value anything that just happened. You did not want to know about me. You did not want to know about my company. You did not want to be part of this team with me. Um, that really does bother me. Now, with that being said, those questions are absolutely okay. If you don't have the answers to those, you should have those conversations, right? And one of the honest questions, like if you are really needing a job, and you're like, this is a really good fit, it is 100% okay to be like, what do the next steps look like? When are you looking to make a
Yeah.
decision? How many other interviews do you have scheduled? But all of that needs to come after you've actually asked some like tangible, like relationship style questions, right?
Yeah.
Like, do not just like when they open the floor to questions, please do not let it be like, oh, you know, nothing's worse than I don't have any questions. Nothing is worse than that, right? But outside of that, if it's like, well, what's the pay? You should already kind of know that pay, but you can have that conversation. But like, there should be another question before that, right? Like, show me that you're connected with this position so that I'll want to move forward with you. I mean, I'll give you those answers, but I already know that like you didn't show any investment into this interview, into my organization, into my team. Why would you do that as an employee then either? So
Yeah.
like make sure you have like questions for sure. And not just like those standard, like what's the pay, what's the benefits, when do I start, when's my lunch break kind of questions. You can ask about schedules. Those things are okay. You need to know them. But those questions should come after you've built the I'm a partner kind of questions, I
Yeah.
feel like.
I think it's building the rapport. And sometimes even I've walked into interviews and I'm like, okay, this is how I expect this to go. And then you completely click with the person, and that interview goes such a different direction than what you originally thought. And I, for one, feel like I get so much more out of an interview when I can freely have a conversation versus being in a regimented kind of style, right? And there's a way to integrate, that somebody might be listening to this and be like, well, we have our strict kind of interview thing, and that's fine, but you can have a way to make those questions your own, right? And so follow the process, follow the guidelines that you've set up, but know how to also kind of talk to other people and integrate that process in an organic way. Because there's nothing worse than just sitting on the screen and it's like knowing that that person's probably sweating bullets behind the screen and so nervous. It's like, I think as an interviewer, or, and a lot of times it's managers in an organization who are doing the interviews, right? It's so important for you to be able to have people feel comfortable when you're having those conversations, because the more comfortable people get, the more that they're going to share with you, and they have probably that opportunity to be authentic in their answers. If you're super rigid, super structured, you're probably going to get super rigid, super structured answers. And now, that sometimes when I'm talking about making things comfortable, I don't mean that, hey, like I'm going to now overshare everything and give you all my relationship drama, family problems, and talk bad about an organization. I will say one of the big turnoffs for me when interviewing a candidate is when they bash their previous employer. Um, they might deserve it. I mean, who knows, right? That company may have not been great. Um, but I think it talks more about trashing an organization versus that organization itself, because they're not in the room to kind of be like, hey, this is what happened. And I think there's always three sides to a story, right? Like what they think happened, what you think happened, and then what really happened. So I think it's really important to be able to share just enough that how you handle problems, how you handle processes shines through without necessarily going in and divulging a bunch of information that you're like, ooh, I can't take that back. I always think of like, can I take that back? Can they take that back? Please take it back. And a lot of times you can't. So I think it's really important to come in and if you are feeling comfortable, just kind of keep in the back of your mind, like, okay, I still need to keep a little bit of the professionalism.
Right. That authentic professionalism.
Yeah.
I have two things, two sides of the coin to this one. Okay. So first side of the coin, as an interviewer, I have had to conduct very, very structured interviews. There are a few questions I keep in my back pocket, or a few comments I keep in my back pocket to try to put the other person at ease, because rigid interviews are very hard for
Yes.
the interviewee. So one of them might be, I might go off script and ask, like, if you had promote a book to somebody, or if you had to suggest a book to somebody, what would you suggest? And that's because I'm a book lover. So I could talk for hours about books, right? So that's what I use because I'm comfortable talking about it. The other one is the way that I had to do one of the interviews, we had to talk about high school. Okay. And so one of the questions I always asked was like, what was your favorite subject? Right. And then based on their comment, I would give my commentary about that subject. Like if I loved it, I hated it, if I was terrible, just to kind of start the conversation with like, cool, you can relax some. I'm not expecting you to answer me so rigid, even if I ask rigid questions. Here's my goofy response. Right. So I'm
Yeah.
still keeping it very professional, but I'm trying to put them a little bit at ease by making some silly kind of comment to let them know like it's totally cool to like answer authentically. Bashing employers. So there is again a fine line, a couth way to do that. I didn't always know how to find or get access to the resources I needed to solve problems. I didn't always have access to the resources. And so these are the things I tried to do to ensure that I had that. Like there's ways to word without being like my employer, like at my last job, we didn't have this. I couldn't get this. I wasn't allowed this, right? There's some ways again to like talk about those. And one of the best things that you need to do for an interview, like the biggest thing is to prep for that interview. And when we talk about prepping does not mean memorizing. It means things like this, like, okay, my last organization, like I didn't have this, and this. How do you think I should say that interview? How can I reword that where it doesn't throw my old employer into a negative light, but I can also structure like I was able to accomplish quite a bit with very little, right? And again, those are one of the things that we're more than happy to hop into a call with you. We'll kind of help you like reword that so that you can land that interview, right? Because we know that it's a tough market out there. And again, you can just like book a little 15-minute conversation with us. We'll talk to you about it. We'll give you our opinions. We'll help you like reword those kind of things. You can shoot us an email if you're like, I don't want to get on camera. I don't even want a phone call. Shoot us an email. We don't mind to try to help you work that
Yeah.
out, right? So like I feel like prepping like that and understanding like okay my last job was so toxic, you cannot go into an interview and say that, right? But how can you word it where it isn't like woe was me, everybody was mean to me, nobody gave me what I needed, to be like, though sometimes I didn't have access, these are the things I did to solve my problem, right? These are how I was able to like get through this. This were some of the things that was lacking, but these are the ways that I work to try to make up for that in my own environment because I took control of the situation, kind of thing. Yeah, so those are my two comments on that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, you don't need to be perfect, but I think you can tell when you're, prepared for an interview. And I think preparation is important. Um, let's be honest, sometimes the best candidate isn't going to get the job. And I mean, I know that sometimes I look back at the hire and I'm like, oof, like that was definitely a personality hire once you get into it, right? Um, and and those things kind of will come with experience in terms of, interviewing. You'll be able to, I think, especially, and then this is more so for business owners, but when you're starting an organization, you may not know in the beginning what a good hire looks like for you. And it's going to take you hiring a couple of people, and maybe letting go of a couple of people to truly fine tune your process and what it is that's going to work for your organization. Not only that, but once you're in a different phase of the organization, who you hired in the beginning is going to be different than who you're going to hire in those later stages where you're maybe now, okay, you stabilized in the beginning. Now you're trying to grow the organization a specific way. Those questions will change. Your interview style will change. The conversation changes. And who you're looking to fill those roles is going to change, right? And so I think it is important, we were talking about questions. I think it is important for a candidate to understand what kind of organization they're interviewing for, because you're going to be a different kind of asset in the different stages that they're in. So are they a small business? Are you their first hire? Or are they 10 plus employees in? Are they 100 plus employees in? It's really important for you to understand that piece of it. And at the end of the day, I think that the candidate that gets the job is typically going to be the candidate that was able to translate their value in the best way possible. They were able to clearly show that they are able to do the job and that they're able to help drive that growth, that business owners are typically looking for. Or maybe if you're leading a team, that you're someone who is able to lead a team and kind of come in and learn the role and get people behind you. I think it's really important though when you talk about preparation is to truly understand that. You don't want to walk into the interview and be like, yeah, I didn't realize what I had applied to. And I've seen that sometimes, you know? So that is important. And I will say that now that I said that, I thought of this, but I think sometimes as a person who is interviewing, you can help prepare the person who is going to be in the interview by giving them a heads up. Like, hey, just a reminder, you're interviewing for this role. Here's the job description that was posted. We'll meet at this time. If you have any questions, reach out. And I always try and reach out before the interview to try and make sure that, hey, do you have any technical difficulties? Like, is there anything I can help you with, like you said, right? And it's like, let's work through it to make sure we're on time. So yeah.
I will say, before we close out for the day, I will say, I wish that somebody had, or I guess back in my day, I wish that like podcast, YouTube, things like that were more prevalent because I was so underprepared for my interviews in the beginning. Like I said, my disorganization is like my weakness, but it's really my strength because everybody's like, take your weakness and turn it into a strength. And I'm like, okay. And it's like that's not how it's done, right? I wish there were places that you could have turned to when you're young, when you're fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, and you're like trying to get the job. Like, what does that mean? What is my weakness? And how can I rephrase that to be a positive? Like, great, you told me to make it a positive. My style did not work. I did not land that job. I knew immediately. I was like, oof. Even my questions were really dumb in that interview. And so it's like I wish that there were things like that that had explained it. People told me that. People said those things, but nobody was like, this is what that means. Here's your skill. This is how you would flip it around, right? Like I wish there was more of that. And that's one of the reasons like these topics are so important to me, especially because like I have young adults now that are going out into the workforce and they're interviewing and they're trying to figure out how to do life. And it's like, hey, let me help you. Let me help you do that, right? Or I mean, think about how hard the market is right now and the competition and trying to find new jobs. And it's like, I'm trying, I'm not getting anywhere. It's like, hey, here are some things that you can do to like elevate it. Cause sometimes it's not that you don't have the experience. It's not that you don't have the knowledge. It's that you haven't gone on a ton of interviews. You don't know how to
Yeah.
prep. You didn't do interviewing. You never hired people. Like, why would you know that? I've gotten better at it because I hire people. I know what I do and don't like in interviews. I know how to remain more calm in those things because I've done so many of them
Yeah.
where I'm on the other end. So I know what that is like and I know how to try to connect with people. But like if I had not gone through that experience, I wouldn't know. So really, unless you're in HR, like you wouldn't know how to get hired,
Yeah,
right?
because I mean, if you think about it, some people are in jobs for years, you know? And so if you've been at your last role for 5, 10 years, that means in 5, 10 years, you more than likely haven't been interviewing. And so a lot of times it comes to that where it's like you're in this spot where it's like, okay, I have this interview. I've only interviewed once in my life and I got the job and I've been there ever since, you know, or I've never needed a network because I had my job network and now I don't know where to turn to. So I think it is really important to, I know you mentioned like high schoolers and stuff, and I think it comes down to one of those things where it's like, well, I wish I would have had like this is how you job interview in high school versus like keep this egg alive because what is that going to do for me, right? But it's kind of like those life skills that unfortunately you don't pick up until you're in the middle of it and then you're like, oof, I messed up that interview.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like it's like hindsight is 2020, right? They always say, but it's I think it is so important to just constantly be refreshing some of that knowledge and asking those questions. And you know, you never know when you're going to need to interview.
Yeah, it's so true. All right, you guys. Well, we hope that you found a lot of value. We hope that you can take this information and be like, okay, cool. This is how I'm going to prep for that interview. And again, if you're like looking at your resume and you're like practicing for those interviews and you go to friends and family and you feel like their answers are not correct, reach out. We're more than happy to help. Right. If you're an employer and you're like, I am taking these interviews, I don't really know what I'm doing, like reach out to. We are more than happy to sit down, talk to you, kind of give you some questions to ask, kind of look what to look for. We'll even kind of review that process that you're using for hiring and give you some tips on that. Because we are here to help you. We are here to bridge the gap between employers and employees to help businesses run better. So, all right, you guys, we will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.